Hello, everyone. Uh, I am going to present what I know about the Lilith corridor, and as it pertains to SYNASTRY and looking at two people coming together and how the corridor will affect how they go about doing that, and the things that can come up later on. This presentation does assume that everybody has a certain amount of understanding about astrology. I'm not going to go into a big, long explanation about things. So, there will be plenty to look up and search out on your own if you want to. But I see the Lilith corridor is a place of personal power. It can be owned, it can be projected. If you give it away, somebody's going to use it against you for sure. But you can train yourself to use it for yourself rather than for anyone else. So let's move forward. The Lilith corridor is a combination of the lunar apogee, which is also known as the Black Moon Lilith, and mean Lilith. The lunar apogee is the osculating or true lunar apogee, and the mean lunar apogee is an averaged calculation, which that's way beyond me. I say that you would use both. A lot of people use the mean Lilith or the mean lunar apogee and assume that that one's easier to work with because it doesn't have such an erratic path through the sky. The osculating Lilith, osculating lunar apogee is very erratic, but that's part of the mystique of Lilith in her element, so to speak. The two of these together create a space on a chart. It can be very narrow, they can be virtually or exactly conjunct, and it can reach up to 30 degrees, which there's a lot of potential for contacts when you have such a wide corridor. But it is very pointed and influential when it's a narrow corridor as well. Some of the keywords and ideas that I use for the Lilith corridor, and that idea is it's a place of independence, but you pay a price to gain that independence. There's a certain amount of personal sacrifice to gain back and own your own power if you haven't already been raised to do that. It has a Uranus type flavor, as we were discussing earlier, in that you kind of separate from the herd, as with the original story of Lilith, leaving the crew, as it were. It's a place of deeply buried treasure. These are, once you own your power, you will realize the treasure that it is of honoring yourself, honoring your natural way of being, your natural truth. And that also speaks back to our Mars and Aries in the first house that we were talking about a moment ago too. This is also a place where we're forced to take a stand for ourselves or bury ourselves, one or the other. And we can break free of restraints that are placed on us by others and strike out on our own with certain progressions and transits to this corridor. Some of the other ideas around this are rawness, anger, receiving offense, runaways, people running away from oppressive situations, places where we're, not places, but a place where we are challenged or locked up, held down in bondage, and escape from those things. And hard-won freedom would be covered by these things. I was studying this back on astro.com and had a thread that ran for quite a while, and I really enjoyed doing it. I loved doing it. It was hard. People share a lot of very deep things when talking about this area, but it was so good to learn these things and to look at these things and to find ways that you can rise above, grow beyond these limitations that can be experienced. Others whose charts touch our Lilith corridor, whether it be by square, opposition, conjunction, or trine, or sextile, they're going to have profound effects on how we experience this area and what we do with it and what we do with it with them. I chose royal purple for this presentation specifically because it is royal. For the reminder, like I say over here on the side, that in one story, Lilith was Adam's first mate and thereby humanity's first mother and primary sovereign. This story being a reminder that we own our own natural sovereignty and must not allow it to be taken from us or must not give it away. We can't dishonor ourselves that way. So let's go forward and take a look. This is a picture that I brought off of the website siderealist.com, and she credits Lux Nox Hex, which, sorry, I don't know how to say it, but I can spell it. I recommend visiting the website. This is just a loose picture of how it looks. The black moon is the apogee of the moon. It's the furthest point away from Earth in the trajectory of the moon, and then Priapus is the perigee, and that's the closest point to Earth. And these are some other websites where you can look into more about what the lunar apogee is, does, and means. I strongly recommend checking out Juan Antonio Revilla's website entries at expresso.co.cr/centaurs/black moon/Lilith. And Aquarian Essence did some wonderful stuff too. There's a lot of links at the end of this. I'm just going to move forward. I just wanted to show the picture of how it kind of looks. The way you find this for yourself on astro.com, pretty straightforward, pretty simple, and that's the easiest way I know of to get the both of them together in a chart. It's difficult on SolarFire. You have to flip back and forth between charts, and that's irritating. So the way you do that is you just go to your My Astro and choose your chart, and when you're in the area where you can choose your chart, choose the natal, and then set up under the additional objects, click Lilith, and that's going to be your mean lunar apogee. That's an averaged figure, and it has far less erratic path than the true path. And so you pick that as one end of the corridor, and then you drop down below the additional objects on the same page and go to the list of other horoscope factors and hypothetical planets, and then you choose H13 at that point, as I've shown over here. And when you click to view the chart, you'll be able to see the both of them together, and it will show you exactly what's happening in that in there where you've got this focus. Sometimes it'll span over two signs. Sometimes it'll all be in one sign, but no more than 30 degrees difference. Osculate means to kiss, to touch a point, just briefly touch on a point. And mathematically, it is to have three or more points that coincide or to come together or hit contact. Let's see, an idea that goes with the true lunar apogee would be out of bounds. Think of a planet that is out of bounds, and like when the moon goes out of bounds, out of the Tropic of Capricorn and Tropic of Cancer, when it goes beyond the 23.27 degree, and it becomes erratic even when coming close there. So if you apply that thought process to this idea here, you'll be on track. I can see that my screen here is being blocked somewhat. Hey, oh God, so smart. Okay. Some general thoughts on the lunar apogee. Some more lunar thoughts is it's a point of empty focus, a calculated trajectory moving erratically along and occasionally touching the moon's path. And this speaks to the subconscious, the intuition, and the deeper emotional journey. A lot along the lines of the nodal axis, you'll see that interpretations and manifestations will carry the flavor of fated soul growth. When somebody contacts you here, you're going to feel it. It doesn't just pass by, you know. These are people you notice. So you can tell it feels fated. You know that you're going to grow somehow. This point also speaks strongly to the divine feminine as she seeks to define and honor herself, whether, you know, within a man or a woman, the animus, the anima, whichever way that's being presented. Honoring your security. And as we were talking earlier about Mars in Aries in the first house, expressing anger, that's something that the Lilith story really speaks to. Is she got angry, she was mad, she did not want to be under, you know, anybody's thumb, and she ran away from that. She escaped that scenario saying, you know, forget you. And she honored herself. It was costly, but she honored herself, and I think that's hugely valuable. So some of the ideas of Black Moon Lilith through the signs and what the corridor will speak to in these signs. A person with their corridor running through these signs, Aries would be identity crisis, you know, issues of independence and dependency, that kind of thing. Taurus will be valuing the self. A certain amount of materialism is in Taurus that way. Just the natural ideas of the signs themselves will be heightened. These will be the areas of focus, the issues that will come up having a corridor in these areas. So Taurus is going to be materialism, value of self, a bit of hoarding, perhaps collecting too much, these kinds of things. Really love for the finer things. I say that I've got my my corridor in the second house. Yeah. So Gemini, rejection, projection, worries about what others think, their minds, you know, really making them worry about what others think. Cancer is about their emotional security, physical security as well, abandonment issues. These things are going to come up when you have a corridor in Cancer. Leo is the need for status, and can lead to buying loyalty for fear of loss of that status, that the place you hold in your social sphere. Virgo would be obsession with imperfection, and would need to allow for imperfection to exist and live with it, with yourself, with others, be accepting. Libra is going to have issues with polarity, making decisions, boundaries. They're also going to have issues with beauty, perhaps a superficial beauty, or perhaps needing to surround themselves with beauty, and a certain amount of loneliness. Scorpio will have issues with loss, occurrences of death, issues with closure, releasing. Sagittarius, seekers of knowledge and truth. Sagittarius, having your corridor in Sagittarius will lead to needing proof of this, that, or the other, value even. Adventuring will come under Sagittarius as well. Capricorn will need recognition, will need a certain amount of power in their life. I'm going to be the boss. You know, I'm the boss of everyone. If I'm a Capricorn, well, that's taking it a bit further, but that's what happens with the Lilith corridor. Aquarius will also have a need for power and influence, more to influence others rather than to tell others what to do, as in Capricorn wants to do that in an I'm the boss kind of way. Aquarius wants to do that in a group kind of way. I'll have influence with others, and can show a lot of stubbornness. Pisces will have issues with poor judgment in trust and issues with loving the self. And these, speak to me, Wendy, what's happening?
I just want to clarify. So when this is the Black Moon Lilith, so this is the one that we choose under where like part of fortune and all that is. Is that correct?
No, it's a little bit further down. It is right below that.
Okay.
So the mean Lilith, and realistically, this is applicable to the corridor and the issues that will come up there. They both will have the same meaning, but the two of them create a corridor, a space in your chart.
Right.
And between the two, you're having these issues come up based on the sign that they're in.
Okay.
Is that more?
Yeah, thanks. I've studied it before, but I always forget. I never remember.
Well, the H13 is going to be the true Lilith, the true Black Moon, or the true lunar apogee.
And that's what Black Moon Lilith is?
Yes.
The lunar apogee. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. So here's our two examples. Well, here's our first example of two people as we're discussing this as it relates to synastry and what will happen between two. So on this side, this side. So the first chart on the right, I mean on the left, is going to be of woman 1. She has a narrow corridor between 19 and 26 Aries in her 12th house. Now, for you, Wendy, specifically, and probably everybody can gain from this, LIL, parenthetical O, that's your osculating lunar apogee. That's H13 being expressed there. And then the what do you call that? The symbol for Lilith at 26 Aries, that is the Lilith on that drop down by the part of fortune. Okay. So we can see on her expression, she's got it in the 12th house. It's in Aries, and she has it squaring or being squared by Uranus conjunct Neptune from the 9th. What we know about her, she's got a lot of drive, this girl, a lot of forward movement. She is artistic, very artistic, and she loves to learn. And I'm not going to go too much further, but that narrow corridor in Aries could bring some understanding between the two of them, because if we look over at his chart, we can see that he's got all of his personal planets, well, not all of them, but so many locked up in his 12th house there with his Pluto. And those, the Sun, Moon, Mercury, and Venus are in Libra, 21 to 24. So it's a very close conjunction there. And because of that 12th house expression of those bits, that would combine well with that with her having her corridor in the 12th house. They would have an understanding that way, and it would draw them together. Notice too that these charts are flipped. I mean, basically his ascendant is 18 Scorpio, her descendant is 20 Scorpio. So just flip the charts and you can see immediately that his Libra stellium is in opposition to and held within her corridor, bracketed by her Lilith corridor there in the 12th in Aries. So that expresses in his 6th house. And just looking at this chart of this person over here on the right, the young man, he has a way of not doing anything that he absolutely does not want to. He don't want to, he ain't gonna. That's Mars in the 7th house, turned retrograde when, early years, and everything there in the 12th house. So there's a lot of that, digging in of heels that you could see. Remember, we talked 12th house being a passive aggressive possibility for expression. Yep. Yeah, it can really do that. So when we look at these two charts, we can see what would draw them together initially. This is very compelling to have all of his planets right in her corridor, so close like that. But to have her Neptune and Uranus squaring off to his 12th house planets really would have caught his attention immediately and held him in a wonderful state of enjoyment with Uranus and Neptune together there, all over his personal planets like that. I mean, he would have been pretty entranced for quite a while there. And being that his corridor himself is in his 1st house, that speaks to her corridor in Aries, so they have a lot of understanding for each other. His corridor being in Sagittarius, a very tight corridor in the 8th degree. I would always, one point that I want to bring up real briefly, I would always run the Sabian symbols. If you have a tight corridor, it's on 1 degree, run that Sabian symbol and meditate on it. It's going to be crucial for how this expresses as well, if you ever use them. I always do. I did not for this presentation because we could go on forever. Anyway, with that being in Sagittarius, he loves to explore new thoughts, new ideas, new places, new ways of doing things. Being that he has so much in the 12th house, he likes to go exploring caves. He's a spelunker. So there's a lot of interesting things that you can see coming out of this chart. So I'll move forward. That those two are their natal charts, and we'll look at their composite chart with the transits around it. So I've got tools over the top here. Well, they started dating early on. They met each other early teens, and they were together for about a year. And he turned 18 while she was still young, and they had to be apart because that was not good. So they came back together once she turned 18, and they'd been together since. And very happy together. You can't, it's hard to find two more peas in a pod types. They're composite Mars. On this chart here, their composite Mars is in her Lilith corridor. You can see the composite Mars there at 23 Aries, and that's in her corridor, and it adds to the drive that she had within the relationship, and has to keep the relationship going. But it also fed her anger, as, and natural anger, warranted anger. But by the same token, it can be a difficult thing to deal with. So the same Mars is in opposition to his natural Libra stellium. So he digs in his heels, and he checked out of reality, enjoying video games and such like that, just not being part, because she has so much drive. And I have to say, he probably would have compared himself negatively to her amazing, beautiful forward movement, because nothing stops this girl, nothing. And plenty of things in her life probably would, but she's just an amazing dynamo. And so he may have spent some time comparing himself unfavorably to her amazingness and decided to check out. And quite possibly with this spurring her anger, I don't know these things for sure. You know, I'm just based on the picture that I see here. I could say that she probably expressed her anger more than once. Pretty good. And he's not one to, with all that 12th house stuff, he wouldn't be one to take that lying down. He would come out with a passive aggressive response in some way. And what we can see is that he probably checked out, and he did. So not shown here, man one, his Eros is at 17 Leo, and that's right on the composite Chiron, which is in opposition to the composite corridor. You can see there, almost conjunct the 7th house and the 6th. So you basically, he probably continued checking out even further. I don't know the intimate details, but I could say that probably this person checked right out and avoided intimacy and became, you know, just something else in the house for her to work around. And so with her situation, the Mars of this composite right in her corridor, she had to do something, and she did. And it really hurt him, but by the same token, it spurred him to kind of take a closer look at himself. Maybe some maturity, a certain amount of maturity has been coming through. And realistically, you can see with their huge 12th or 11th house focus that they will be friends for a long time, no matter what. They're just meant to be together somehow. And I don't know if they'll be together romantically, but it looks like it. It's not a frivolous relationship. It's a compelling relationship. Anyway, he's experienced positive things out of it, so that's probably what it was designed for. So this is our second couple, and expression of her corridor. She's on the left again, and she has that in the 1st house, in Taurus, and right on the 2nd cusp, right on the 2nd house cusp there. It's a tight corridor at 7 Taurus, and it's kind of a double dose to have that corridor right on the 2nd house cusp and be in Taurus. It's that duplicating the theme of really needing the material security, needing the concrete, you know, home sweet home, everything reliable, that kind of thing, and probably needing to be cosseted and cared for and maybe fed bonbons and such. Man number 2, he has a 10th house corridor in Aquarius, which is that drive for power and influence on a group scale. Being experienced in the 10th house is going to be as, you know, managerial type, boss man type of expression. That is squared by his Pluto Mars opposition, Mars to the 1st, Pluto to the 6th, close on that cusp right there of the 7th. And his career is not going to be put aside. He's got significant drive for that. So a recent promotion had him moving away from their home together. They had been experiencing issues to start, and it was originally thought that she would go with him. And she's very well taken care of by her family, being close by them here. And moving is not the easiest thing for her. In between the two of them, they could say that there are other issues at hand, but the real question is, are you ready to move away and, live an adult lifestyle where mommy and daddy and, everybody in your family takes care of you? And that's probably not so much the case. It's not glamorous washing dishes, and taking care of laundry and that kind of thing. Sorry about that. So moving on, their composite chart, the corridors there on the 12th in Aries, actually spanning Pisces and Aries, from 28 Pisces to 3 Aries, going over the Aries point, where that brings this situation to the world. In other words, I would say that this relationship is affected by the outer world. And I would say that speaks to the fact that this young man got a promotion and moved away. That's an event that the world is affecting for them. It's in the 12th house, endings, quite possible out of this. Not sure. I can't read the future, but that's where I would be thinking. The nodal axis for man 2 is squared by the composite corridor, and that creates a relationship skip step for him. It's resolved by his north node, which he has. Here, let me go back again. He has his north node at 0 Capricorn and his south node at 0 Cancer, obviously. So with this in his 11th house, this corridor, the composite corridor in his 11th house, I would say that creates that skip step for him. It tells me that he's on the right path, honoring his north node, and that in this instance, this relationship is teaching him, teaching them both, giving them both a certain degree of maturity, and some tough lessons of independence, his independence, her dependency. And it could very well be. I love my family. Sorry. There we go. It could very well be that they come back together, but the independence between the two of them really appears that this is the theme for both of them to really learn. Worthy of note, a little sad, he's much more represented in this composite chart than she is, and that's something that we look to in relationship astrology. Is there one chart that has more representation in the composite than the other? If there is, you can tell there's an imbalance, or at least one feels there is an imbalance, especially with the 6th house focus. There will be that as well. But it's something that you'd want to notice in this. The fact that the corridor is right there at the 12th house, puts focus toward the 6th as well. So as we can see with her natal chart, I'll go back up to it. She's going to learn this lesson a few times about dependence and independence, because her Pluto is conjunct the North Node in her Scorpio 8th house. So you can see on the left here, she has her North Node Pluto in the 8th. It's a tough lesson. Okay, so this is just man 3 and woman 3, an example. We have his time, and we do not have hers, but we do have her date, so we're pretty good there. I have her as the transit planets and luminaries on the outer ring there. I hope everybody can see that clear enough. His corridor is in the 2nd house, 19 to 23 Capricorn. her corridor is in his 7th house, 5 to 19 Gemini. Now, that encapsulates his sun, and his corridor has her Mars as well. So this is a very compelling relationship as well. When you meet somebody who touches you on these points this way, there is no wishy-washy response. There's no wishy-washy response when it's like this. You are going to feel this person. And this is what he says, is that he found her incredibly beautiful, just, you know, so thrilled by her beauty. And he has Venus in the 8th house in Cancer, and you can see that that would be already a person who leaned toward that, really an eye for beautiful women, but also her Uranus is right on that Venus. So it's going to be, you know, pretty sparkly, pretty intriguing. The corridor conjunctions there are very compelling. But it's conjunct her Mars and opposed by her Moon and squared by her Neptune up there in Libra in the 11th house, in his 11th house. And they had been in a certain relation, a certain religion. It was kind of a cultish type of religion in their early years. And they felt that they were, you know, on the right path. But he started to see, you know, through the teachings of this religion, and I'm not going to name the religion because I don't want somebody who has association with that to feel like I'm passing judgment. But he began to see the control mechanisms of the teachings of the religion, and he was not going to buy it because he's not really one for a whole lot of externally placed control. He'll place it himself, thank you very much. And she began hiding his money, stealing it away, you know, just doing that. She wasn't working. So she began hiding money, hoarding monies, you know, and he basically, with his corridor being in the 2nd house and in Capricorn, he needed respect. It was a kind of an non-negotiable item for a person with the corridor in the 2nd house in Capricorn. They need respect. And for her, I wish I knew what house that was in, but it's in Gemini, so she needed a certain amount of freedom, a certain amount of, what did she need? A certain amount of control to make sure that what he was thinking, you know, she wanted to make sure of what he was thinking, to keep control over that. You know, his impression of her needed to stay at a certain point for her to feel secure. The last 10 years of the relationship was pretty sad, and eventually a big blow up. Really a tragedy. If they had only been able to talk it out. She had to control him though, so she couldn't talk it out. Very Gemini corridor. So some further ideas I'd like to share. I experience the lunar apogee is the more important. It's the more valid point. The mean point, it's only useful because it provides the bracket. I don't look at it in any other scenario. It can provide the heights of blissful enthrallment and the depths of heinous entrapment, or both. You will see this if you study it in yourself with other partners that you may have had, your current partner, what have you. Just briefly, while I was going through during my astro study of the Lilith corridor and the transformations that it brought about, I absolutely loved it. I loved what I was doing. But at that time, I was also in a very Lilith-style relationship, and I didn't recognize it until the end. It was just, well, you know, it's like, whatever. Live and learn. So, I don't really need to spend any time on this except to show you the picture of the type of relationship that it was. My chart on the inside, his chart on the outside. My Lilith corridor there in the second house, 20 to 29 Sagittarius, his Mars conjunct, and then his corridor conjunct my sun over in my 12th house, just so happened to be his 12th house. And it's a Libra corridor. So when you look at those things, just the basic understanding of what the corridor will do, chart 1 is in need of truth and proof of value within the relationship, and knows that, you know, beauty is skin deep and beauty is as pretty does, right? But chart 2 needs beauty and peace, but has difficulty with proof and truth because he's a Libra, he's wishy-washy, and he's always this side or that side or both sides or any side, I don't know. So that's what went on there. And it's pretty clear in this. And I thought that was a good example. Now, okay, so I'm not trying to discuss politics, but I am showing the Putin's chart. I got that from Astro, and they had 2 other charts that had been rectified, but those other charts aren't this chart. This chart is got to be his chart because he's a very private man, and the 12th house focus there is very well defined. Makes that very clear. So this chart has his corridor up on the top, and I'm sorry, that's before I realized I could put them in, so I drew the pictures there up at the top there. He's got his corridor at his Pluto, at his mid-house in the 10th, midheaven in the 10th house. Talk about a power chart, right? He is very intelligent, very much pursuing education. It's just the basics on him. Lots of drive, accomplishment. That's what his value is. And he's got Saturn and Uranus transiting trine to his corridor right now, creating a grand trine. And I think he's probably pretty happy with Trump being in office because of those transits. Normally I wouldn't speak to it whatsoever, but I saw it and I thought it'd be cool to show. And that makes me want to show Trump as well, just to see what goes on. So there's Trump. He's got his Sagittarius corridor. It's 4 and 5, if I recall correctly, 4 and 5 Sagittarius. And it implies a need for a secure home base, perhaps a bit of obsession about being sure that his home is very secure. I guess I understand that. He's forceful, brash, kind of a pain, pretty obnoxious. Putin has a lot more polish. Being that Putin's corridor is right there in the 10th house on his midheaven with Pluto, I would say that he is could set an example to show this one how to get along and behave. I don't know. I don't know enough about politics to speak to that. Not my focus. But looking at the SYNASTRY chart between the two, it looks like they could cooperate together. And I didn't focus on it just a moment ago, but in Trump's chart, he's there to change the world. You know, he's however he does it, whether it's in a bad way or it ends up being in a good way, I don't know, but I know that he's a harbinger of change. He's got that Uranus thing going on that is going to throw everything up in the air, and wherever it lands, we know how to create. I don't know if anybody listening believes this, but I believe that we are the ones who create what's going on. Our thought processes are what we focus on in our thoughts when we're going chatter, chatter, chatter in our minds. What we focus on determines what comes. So if we focus on good things coming, change being positive, change being transformational, it will be. And if enough of us do it, it really will be. So with that said, the changes that we've got going on could be pretty positive if we allow them to be, if we focus on them being. So Trump's Mars is right at Putin's corridor, and I thought that was important because his drive, the actions that he takes, will probably be a positive thing in the beginning in working things out with Russia, but who knows in the end. So, well, that's what I wrote there. I believe this is an indication of cooperation between an existing power structure and a newcomer. Trump could learn much. Below are some articles which imply the same. They're kind of catty, a little bit of attention grabbing, a little, nasty. They like to write bad things about both of these people. I don't know the truth of the matter on either one, but that's, it implies that they have a relationship and that they'll work well together. The articles were written in 2015 when Uranus was opposing their composite corridor. It's in Libra. It's in the first house, which implies a good thing. I think that with Neptune being right there in their combined corridor, that it has the possibility of being, very utopian to start. I don't know about the end, obviously. It does appear that there would be a certain equitable arrangement of these two based on the chart that I'm seeing. I don't see a lot of negativity going on. I see that it's conjunct the South Node, which implies that it's been a comfortable situation anyway for a while, that it's been, lived through previously. But being in the first house implies to me that it's supposed to be there. The node for this combination of the two is in the 7th house, so they are supposed to be working together. And that's what I'm seeing out of this. Having the Chiron attachment, I forget what Chiron's doing in the other chart there, but I know that it's attached to Trump's Chiron and Putin's sun, I believe it is, and that is where one fosters another. So that brings me again to say that Putin has a lot to teach Trump, probably. And then these are my links. These are links to further study. This isn't enough. I mean, there's so much to look at, but when I did the astro.com thread, I learned so much. People shared so much. I started documenting it all, and I did document it all, everybody's chart that, where their placements were, the general theme of things that they experienced. And it was compelling, but it was all very obvious. It's not, there wasn't anything that said, wow, why would that happen? No, it was all very obvious, like reading textbook. So that's why I thought it was compelling. Does anybody have questions or anything they'd like to go back over or share?
I have a comment, Dawn, and that I have heard that Black Moon Lilith speaks to our biggest fears.
Yeah, I would say that you're absolutely right. When we have Lilith in Libra, we have a fear of partnership, right? We have a fear of giving in to partnership because, ooh, what if there's a better partner coming along? These simple things. It's all pretty obvious. So if we are a person who's giving away our power in the area of our Lilith corridor, it is because we're afraid of owning it. And once we finally realize we can, the whole world opens up for us, like our anger, like we were discussing earlier. Once you own your anger and you express it, it cleanses everything. Everything's clean. So long as it's honored. If it's not honored, forget it.
Thanks.
Thank you. I don't know when our talk is supposed to end, but if anybody else has questions or comments or anything they'd like to share.
Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
So when we were looking at Putin's and Trump's chart, I was just thinking about the relationship charts that you were showing and how like they kind of fell apart because people couldn't be honest and do, their own inner work to show up for, a partnership. And it makes me wonder about the whole thing with Putin and Trump. And even though they might be supposed to be working together, I mean, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be something good, right? I mean, you never know.
Right.
And then I was looking at that Neptune. They had their composite. They have Neptune, Mars, the South Node, and is that's the apogee or the I can't remember. So bad about that. But I mean, Neptune there could be a lot of pulling the wool over each other's eyes, or couldn't it?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. What starts out as wonderful, glamorous happiness. This is ideal.
Right.
Can dissolve into schmuckdom.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. And then, so I guess like somebody's sun squaring your Lilith planets, that would be significant. I mean, it's just like a conjunction, sort of, I mean, meaning it's important.
Yeah. Yeah, the square is going to create a certain amount of conflict, but it's, it can be the source of great drive. It depends on what people do with it.
Yeah.
I've got squares and they make me drive toward things more.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess I was trying to say that you were saying if someone's planets conjunct that, you're not going to not recognize this person. There's going to be some pull to connect with that person.
Same with the square, the opposition. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm wondering if it's a karmic warning.
So I really think so. Yeah. In that ex relationship that I'd had here, what I wasn't showing is that my Eros was trapped in that corridor there, and I can tell you it was compelling.
Right.
Woo.
Right. I mean, a lot of times compelling really means walk the other way.
Run.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, but then that's repeated in the Pluto on Venus, and I knew it.
Right.
I knew it. I knew enough about astrology with all of it to go, there's enough positive here. And if I speak to these things clearly and make it known what can go wrong and what our focus we would want to have in order to move for.
Yeah, no. we can talk ourselves into anything.
That's right. No. Yeah, we agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was good. Such a good lesson.
Right.
Dawn, it's Linda here. Can we go back to the composite chart for Trump and Putin, please?
Yes. Here we are.
Yeah, the composite. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm looking at the south node there, and it's conjunct Mars and Neptune and the Black Moon Lilith.
Right.
So I'm seeing these planets as in a relive situation from the past. They have to be relived and redone.
Right.
Of course, I'm looking at Neptune and Mars as being passive aggressive. But what's so funny is that the ruler of all of these is Venus in the 12th house. So to me, that indicates, okay, there's these two really powerful men in this passive aggressive relationship, and Venus in the 12th house, well, really, you know, God has the final say.
Oh,
And we'll say so with love.
Yeah. So
I like that, Linda. And Venus in Virgo, you know, like some real discernment. And then they have the North Node in the 7th in Aries. That's a redo, right?
Right.
Hopefully they're not going to create a war. That's my only other comment.
I really see that it'll spark change. I mean, the drive for change is there. You know, it just, I'm looking at Uranus being square to the relationship axis there. And I see that this, I believe that this would spark, you know, major changes. I think that Venus in the 12th house will bring out, I don't know, I am too, I know I am. When I read this, I can see the pitfalls, but I love that Venus in the 12th house. I want her to stand up and own her power and express, and even if it is in a very Piscean way, you know, even though Pisces is all the way across the chart, I want her to, and I feel that she will express out humanitarian love.
Well, Dawn, couldn't that symbolize like the collective unconscious, the feminine, the collective of the feminine that's trying to speak anyway, right?
That's what I was saying. You got it.
All right.
She's gonna.
Yeah.
And I think,
Around it according to this chart.
what's that?
No way around it according to this chart. I mean, they're kind of they could implode into the first house, which, you know, it's already happening, I would say, in some respects, just personality wise, and the dominance of women.
We're standing up, though.
Yeah.
We're standing up and starting to own it and starting to realize that our power is in our collective unconscious, and we will, with love ourselves through it and start to express,
Yeah.
start to bring it out.
Yeah, and also that Virgo, you know, I mean, it gets dissolved in the 12th, sort of, but I mean, the Virgo is the feminine, right? And the earth, the changing earth. Well, that's very helpful. Thank you.
yeah, that's very interesting. Interesting that the moon's in Pisces as well. So many feminine symbols. So Dawn, would you like to continue or ask
No, I'm good.
questions?
I'm good.
Any other comments?
I'm noticing this Chiron is in the composite chart is square pretty tightly to Trump's Mars.
Let me go back up there. It's at 26.
26 Leo. Or is that, or am I reading that backwards?
Nope. Chiron Composite 26 Scorpio. His Mars is at 26 Leo, and that's within Putin's corridor. And on Trump's fourth house.
Yeah. I get nervous when I see Scorpio contacts like that.
So do I. I think they're both loose cannons.
Yeah, yeah.
I really want, I have to be honest, I want loose cannons right now. I do not want the status quo. I do not want the same old crap. Now, there's no way. I did not vote for any Trump.
Right.
But I certainly wasn't going to vote for her either.
I
And
totally get what you're saying there. The thing I guess, and maybe this is from personal experience, it seems like when the loose cannons when the loose cannons get let loose, they too much aren't hurt. It's the people around them that had nothing to do, with it, and the innocent folks are always hurt, and that's what
well,
always
that's
gets me.
always the case with this type of power. They don't get their hands dirty,
Right.
their feet trod.
And I think too, it speaks to the collective, when things are not sustainable, when things are, when the models are not realistic, when the plans are not realistic, everything starts to stagnate, right? So you need a shakeup, unfortunately, to get things moving. And shakeups are not pretty, but they are necessary, you
Right.
know? Nothing comes easy. It requires sacrifice and effort. So, yeah, how do I say it? I welcome the shakeup.
I welcome the shakeup. We need to have that cleansing anger.
You're right there. I guess it's with those of us who seems like their whole life is a shakeup.
We need to talk privately sometime.
I don't know. I mean, I don't mind a shakeup, but they don't need to send us all down the toxic path.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know too.
And destroy everything.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think too, that comes from perspective. I think you have to consider both the good and the bad, to balance the perspective. You can't turn a blind eye to the harsh reality of things.
Oh, I know.
So
Believe me, I know that.
I think when we all take both perspectives into consideration, we can make more proactive choices, And the thing too is when we when we destabilize ourselves, we ain't helping,
Mm-hmm.
So I think the perspective part is huge, and that, yeah, I'll stay with that.
I've been learning about raising our frequency, just personally owning our frequency, our inner talk, and where it brings us. Does it bring us down? Does it bring us up? We need to stay up. Those of us who are aware of the internal, the watcher behind the mind, we need to pay attention to where our frequency is at and what we focus on, because those of us who know to do it are going to be able to help all the rest that can't, that don't know to do it, that don't even know what we're talking about, those who are locked into their screens, etc. We owe it to the world to step in and express a highest frequency as possible, to push the benefit out, to share the benefit, to be that Venus in Virgo in the 12th house through our internal mechanisms, offering that out into the world. I don't have the more concrete words to use to say it, but it's what I do daily. It's what I try to do every minute of every day, and it's not possible, but I try. But I think that's what we're supposed to do.
it goes back to, you know, the change that you want to see in the world, you have to do it within yourself first. And that, oh, were you going to say something?
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, it's you know, it's said a lot nowadays, but there's a reason for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Does anybody have anything else that they wanted to look at or talk about or mention?
Yeah, Dawn, it's Linda. I'm on the other side of the world in Australia, and I have not really been part of this drama, and it sort of feels really good to stand apart from it.
Yeah.
So just a quick comment on that Venus in Virgo in the 12th house in the composite chart. You know, it's not going to be perfect. This relationship and what they create together, you know, it's not going to be perfect. And I guess that's the biggest thing that I'm seeing in this, that they are not perfect, and we're sort of picking them to bits. And it's good to pick them to bits because they're in huge positions of power.
Right.
But at the same time, change comes about in a messy kind of way. It's not going to be neat and tidy.
Yeah. And I think that too is part of the shakeup. I mean, if you think about it, it's only a big earthquake because we resisted. The more we resist, the greater the shakeup is going to be. So that just kind of symbolizes how stagnant we have been, you know, therefore greater the shakeup. That's how I make sense of it.
Well, Pluto is ruling through their composite fourth, and I said ruling, I meant rolling through, and that is, you know, that'll be a while before it gets out of there. So it is about overthrowing the foundations, I would say. And I think that's probably a big thing of what this composite chart is showing me. And that's what I want. I'm not happy with the way things have been the last 500 years.
Right.
Yeah,
You know, not all the foundations are bad. I mean, I don't know. I just can't see that it's good for us to change. But I think that they're going to really harm a lot of people and in the environment. I mean, the things that they're already putting out, it's pretty extreme. I don't trust it.
Yeah,
But
I don't trust it either.
that's
That moon
Yeah.
in Pisces in the 6th house, well, it's the handle to the bucket of this chart. So we have to be really wary of of the information that's being pumped out, and use our discrimination.
yeah.
And Libra can say that all of this Libra energy worries me as well, because Libra definitely has a tendency. I mean, if you really want to look at it from a very honest point of view, that's how I see how Trump got in office, because he said what people wanted to hear.
Mm-hmm.
They did not want to, you know, because he said what they wanted to hear. They didn't look behind those, you know, the details, and look behind the bravado of the Leo, and didn't look to see and ask questions. Well, what exactly do you mean by that? How are you going to, you know, do all of what you're doing? And he's done the exact opposite now that he's in office. You know, even though he really has did what he said he was going to do, but nobody stopped to question what you're saying. How is that going to benefit everyone?
Well, I really see that, like you said, Linda, the bucket handle being the moon in Pisces is women stepping forward and sharing themselves, their energy, their positivity in a humanitarian way
Yeah,
out in the world for the health of the world.
yeah. I mean,
Because this relationship is on the world.
yeah, definitely look at it in a positive light, absolutely. And at the same time, if we see the negativities coming up, that, you know, we created this chart, we are the collective, and we all need to take responsibility. So Pluto in Capricorn, let's take responsibility and do our part. and play our part in this.
I think that's absolutely right. Take responsibility for ourselves first.
Yeah, whatever that may mean. And, you know, my way of doing that is not going to be like yours. And, you know, we all have our part to play. And all the little pieces in the puzzle, you know, that 6th house and that Venus in Virgo, we're all the little pieces coming together.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So, Dawn, I guess we need to wind down the meeting. It's been so fascinating. So thank
I
you
thought
so
so
much.
too.
Yeah.
Thank you all for
that
participating.
was awesome. Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you all. Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you, A. I love all the feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, it's good. Really good.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.